Yes, and we are live. Happy, what is today? Thursday. Happy Thursday, y'all. Heck yeah, let's get right into it. We got a lot to discuss. And let me know, I know that in the last stream that there was a portion where the audio was low. So if at any time you hear like a drop off in audio quality, yeah, please do let me know and I'll correct that ASAP. But yeah, I just want to make sure check 1, check 2, check 3, check 4. We microphone check and then we check some more. Yeah, happy Thursday. We are going to recap some of the action that just took place last weekend. There was even a fight that took place yesterday between Sergey Lipinets and who did Lipinets fight? It was on the Pro Box card. Robbie Davies Jr. versus Sergey Lipinets. Pro Box, by the way, for the hardcore boxing fans, if you're looking for some like good midweek action, the fights are streaming on YouTube. Literally, like these aren't like pay even a few dollars per view. It's available. The broadcast team includes Paulie Malignaggi, Chris Algieri. It's a good broadcast. I heard Mike Goldberg on one of the broadcasts, but yeah, there was an entertaining fight between Lipinets and Robbie Davies Jr. just yesterday. Golden Ram Buzz is in the house. What's going on? Is that Damon? Is that you, man? Heck yeah. So yeah, we're gonna recap the Canelo fight. We're going to recap Inoue versus Luis Neri. We're going to discuss what's next for Canelo and Inoue. We're also going to preview a bit. I did release a Lomachenko versus Kambosos preview, a full preview, but we're going to discuss Lomachenko and Kambosos. Lomachenko's 36 years old. That's just one thing to consider. And oh, by the way, Bob Arum also says that he would like Lomachenko, if he gets by Kambosos, to fight Shakur Stevenson later on this year. And that's assuming Shakur Stevenson gets by Artem Harutyunyan I think that one is in July. That's actually a pretty good card. Shakur Stevenson versus Harutyunyan also features O'Shaquie Foster defending his WBC 130-pound title against Robson Conceição, who just fought to a draw against Emmanuel Navarrete. That's going to be on the Shakur versus Artem card, as will Keyshawn Davis versus Miguel Medueno. So, yeah, we're going to talk again. We're going to preview Loma versus Kambosos. There are also a couple lesser heralded, but still pretty good fights taking place this weekend. Jessica McCaskill versus Lauren Price. That's going to be at welterweight. Eduardo Rocky Hernandez, the guy who gave O'Shaquie Foster all he could handle in Foster's first title defense. He's returning to the ring. Eduardo Rocky Hernandez is going to be taking on Daniel Lugo. Daniel Lugo, you might remember, just gave Mauricio Lara all he could handle in Lara's 130-pound debut. So yeah, that's going to be a good fight between guys who really pushed O'Shaquie Foster and Mauricio Lara. That fight's also taking place this weekend, as is Denzel Bentley versus Danny Dignam, Marlon Tapales versus Natapong Jankyu. Tapales is the guy who Naoya Inoue beat to become undisputed champion at 122. There's also a lot of news that just broke over the past several days. One of those bits of news was that, unfortunately, Artur Beterbiev versus Dmitry Bivol is postponed. I swear, that's one of the fights that I have been looking forward to the most on the fight calendar. Beterbiev versus Bivol. We're going to have to wait a while. Turki Al-Sheikh said he's going to try to schedule that ASAP, but yeah, it's not happening on June 1st, unfortunately. Now, the card is still going to go on. Nova 1992 is in the house. Heck yeah, thank you for coming through. You don't happen to be Abraham Nova, are you? But yeah, thank you. Either way, I appreciate you coming through. Yeah, so Beterbiev versus Bivol, we're going to have to wait on that. Now, in the interim, the WBO, who, Beterbiev holds the actual WBO full title, But the WBO just ordered Joshua Buatsi versus Anthony Yarde for the interim light heavyweight champion. So basically, while we wait for Beterbiev versus Bivol, the WBO interim belt is going to be up for grabs between, again, Joshua Buatsi and Anthony Yarde. That's another two kind of top 5, top 6-ish guys in the division. So that's a good fight to look forward to. But yeah, I was super bummed. And the thing, with Artur Beterbiev, I swear, for the last few fights, he's had to postpone the fight due to injury. I almost feel like it's expected. It's like clockwork when it comes to Beterbiev fights. I can't think of the last fight that was scheduled and actually just went on without a hitch when it comes to Beterbiev. Maybe the Marcus Brown fight, but I don't know. I feel like even, early COVID, Beterbiev was getting injured. He had a jaw surgery due to a tooth. Well, it was a tooth surgery that led to, I believe, jaw decay, some bone issue with the jaw just before his fight against Callum Smith. So that one had to be postponed. But yeah, it just seems like every damn Artur Beterbiev fight, we have to wait because there is an injury. I hope it's not a bad one. I think I read that it's a knee injury. So, at 38 years old, that does kind of alter how I view Beterbiev versus Bivol. Because if Beterbiev was, coming off that stoppage of Callum Smith, and Beterbiev, by the way, still has that 100% KO ratio or KO percentage, if Beterbiev was able to pivot from that and feel fine going into the showdown against Dimitri Bivol, then I would look at the fight one way. And I've been back and forth, and I've been saying this, chat after chat. I've been really, really just back and forth on who I think is going to win that one. Now that at 38, I believe he is suffering a knee injury that's forcing you to postpone the fight. Yeah, I look at this fight a little bit differently because of that. So yeah, keep your eye on that one. When we start talking about Beterbiev versus Bivol and we start getting closer to the fight date, just remember this fight was postponed because of a knee injury sustained by Artur Beterbiev. So yeah, we'll see. But I can't say that I'm surprised at this postponement, unfortunately. It just sucks that we were less than a month away when we got the news. So yeah, also I mentioned that the WBO ordered Buatsi versus Anthony Yarde in the interim for the interim WBO light heavyweight title. Well, Dimitri Bivol is still going to fight on that June 1st card. It's not going to be against Beterbiev. It's not even going to be against a top 10 light heavyweight, but he is going to stay busy against Malik Zinad. I've barely heard of the guy, but that's who Dimitri Bivol, as a late replacement, is going to be defending his WBA title against on that fight. So they're still going to go forward with the Queensberry versus Matchroom 5-on-5, and that card is stacked. But yeah, unfortunately, no Beterbiev versus Bivol. I swear, that's one of the top 3 or 4 fights that could be made in all of boxing, but we're going to have to wait. So yeah, we're going to talk a bit more about that later on in the hour. But another piece of news that broke over the past few days, it's another unfortunate, well, I think that there's a very unfortunate side to it, and then there's a good side to it. Not for the guy who I'm going to be talking about, but for the rest of the division. Jermall Charlo, the longtime WBC middleweight champion, just got arrested. It sounds like he was drunk driving at double the blood alcohol content threshold. So it's like 0.08 will get you the DUI. He was reportedly double that. I don't recall whether I read that there was an accident involved, but there was the evasion of police involved, reportedly. And so, yeah, he got arrested. Jermall Charlo did. And he was also stripped of the WBC middleweight title. So Mauricio Suleiman and the WBC finally, this was basically the straw that broke the camel's back, and they stripped Jermall Charlo of the WBC belt that he's held for a few years now. And, he held that belt for over 3 years without defending the title in that division. He, last defended that belt against Juan Montiel, the guy who gave him a tough fight in 2021, Juan Macias Montiel. And that wasn't Jermall Charlo's best showing. Before that was one of Jermall Charlo's best career performances, late 2020 when he beat Sergey Derevianchenko. So that fight against Montiel in like the summer of 2021, that was the last time Jermall Charlo defended that belt. But because he was going through mental health struggles, he was going through, a divorce, alcohol issues, reportedly, according to what I read and in reports, and according to what Jermall Charlo himself has discussed. But he did return to the ring to fight Jose Benavidez Jr., but it was above 160. So he still didn't defend that WBC middleweight belt. But Mauricio Suleiman and the WBC still allowed Jermall Charlo to hold on to the belt. They were just, I guess, making some sort of like a principled stance, like we're going to stand by our champion. Meanwhile, Carlos Adames has been holding like the interim WBC belt for like close to a couple of years now, pretty much, I think, since he beat Derevianchenko and he beat Julian J. Rock Williams, and he beat Juan Montiel. He stopped the same Montiel that gave Jermall Charlo a rough, tough fight in 2021. Carlos Adames stopped that guy. So it's been Adames who's been the busier fighter holding on to the interim title, but he still hasn't had a chance to fight Jermall Charlo for the actual belt. Well, now the WBC, again, finally stripped Jermall Charlo, and Carlos Adames is now elevated from interim WBC middleweight champion to full middleweight champion. So I'm happy for Carlos Adames. When I said that there was some good news to come out of bad news, the Jermall Charlo arrest, right? Because I really wanted to see Jermall Charlo get his career back on track. Like, I don't know if we'll ever see prime Jermall Charlo again. It's just been a few years, and usually you don't just work your way back into shape and get all of your faculties and all of your abilities back. Unfortunately, it just doesn't work that way, but I hope that he could defy the odds and return in prime form. But this latest arrest, especially when you read the details, it's not encouraging news when as it pertains to Jermall Charlo. So we have a new WBC middleweight champion. I can only hope that, and this is a big hope, because Carlos Adames is, fighting on PBC, the guy who I consider to be the best or second best in the division, along with Adames, or Erislandy Lara has been performing really well. I know he's like 40 plus years old, but I mean, he's been performing very, extremely well, especially with that latest knockout over Michael Zarafa. That was, I didn't expect him to dust Zarafa off like that. So yeah, Erislandy Lara is old. Yes, he is less evasive and yes, slick reflex wise than he used to be, but man, he's lining people up with that left hand. But what I was going to say is I hope that Carlos Adames versus Janibek Alimhanula could get made. Now, Janibek is kind of sitting on an island right now. He's with Top Rank, who for years, they haven't had a deep stable at middleweight. They just haven't. And I talk about this all the time. Different promoters at different times specialize in different divisions. And then sometimes you have more parity in certain divisions where the elite, the distribution of elite fighters is more scattered among the major promoters. But middleweight has been a division where Top Rank just doesn't do well. They don't have a lot. You could say the same about 168 when it comes to Top Rank. Certain other divisions, they thrive. 140, 135, great. 160, 168, not so much. But they do have Janibek. But it's frustrating when you see a fighter who is in the prime of their career and they can't get the fights that matter because they just happen to be, at that time, signed to the wrong promoter, unfortunately. So in those cases, I look at it as being incumbent upon the promoter who's got less going on in the division to kind of capitulate and make some concessions for your guy so that you could make a fight with another promoter, cross promote, so you could give your fighter in this case, Janibek Alimhanula on Top Rank, the opponents that matter. So yeah, in a perfect world, PBC and Top Rank would be able to do business and make Carlos Adames the new full WBC middleweight champion against Janibek, who's got 2 of the belts. The other champion is Erislandy Lara. So it's more likely that we get Lara versus Carlos Adames. Although, I don't know, sometimes it's tough to tell what Lara wants. Like, sometimes there appear to be good options on the table. Like, I don't know what happened with Erislandy Lara versus Danny Garcia. They were talking about that being a thing. Then I didn't hear about it again. So I don't know what's up with that. But I hope, for the sake of boxing, that Adames's, well, not his next fight, because it was also announced that he's going to be defending his new WBC title against Terrell Goucher, who has fought the likes of Erickson Lubin, who fought Tim Tszyu. Didn't beat these guys, but he's fought these other guys. He's fought some of the cream of the crop in the division. He's a formidable opponent. And, you know, Janibek, or Carlos Adames, hasn't fought since that battle against Julian J. Rock Williams, which ended up being a pretty competitive fight. But Adames has been out of the ring himself for a little while. So I'm not mad at this Terrell Goucher fight. Kind of as a get back in the ring, get some rounds, hopefully beat Terrell Goucher. But after that, I would love to see them make Adames against either Erislandy Lara, so you could unify titles there, or do a cross-promotional fight against Janibek with Top Rank, so you could unify titles there. But yeah, Jay Foreman is in the house. What's going on? Is Naoya Inoue my #1 pound for pound right now? That is a major topic of discussion, and we're certainly going to get to that. I'll give you my quick thought before we get into it a little bit deeper later on in the hour. You said it's hard to argue against him after that Neri performance. The way I see it, it's either him or Terrence Crawford right now. Terrence Crawford, the thing that works against him is that he's not as active as Naoya Inoue. Inoue fights at least 2 times a year. Sometimes he'll fight 3 times a year, but at least minimum 2 times a year. Since COVID, Crawford has had a couple of years where it's only been 1 fight for that year. So, you know, they're both dominant fighters. They're both multiple division undisputed champions. Undisputed in multiple divisions. 2 of the only, I think they are the only 2 male fighters, because was it Clarissa Shields that did it? I think Clarissa Shields did it, but they are the only 2 male fighters to become undisputed. Did Katie Taylor do it too? I'm not sure about that, but let me know if you know if Katie Taylor is a 2 division undisputed champion. I don't think she is, but let me know. But yeah, Naoya Inoue and Terrence Crawford are the only 2 male undisputed champions in multiple divisions. Now, if Alexander Usyk beats Tyson Fury, that complicates matters, because then I think you could make an argument and make a case for either of those 3 guys, Terrence Crawford, Naoya Inoue, or Alexander Usyk. Because Usyk, if you go undisputed at cruiserweight, and then you could become undisputed at heavyweight, and think about the size gap, because that's another thing. When you jump divisions, when you're, you know, 112 to 115 to 118, that's 3 different divisions, 3 pounds apart each, right? And then 4 pounds between 118 and 122. Now, if Inoue also does 126, we're really cooking with gas, right? But it's a few pounds each. But when you make the jump from cruiser to heavyweight, and you're not only beating the heavyweights that are like Bridgerweight size, 225, 230, 235, but you fight the 240 plus pound Anthony Joshua, usually 245 or around there. And then you fight the Gypsy King. If he could beat the 270 plus pound Gypsy King, and this is the same guy that became undisputed at 200 pounds, we're talking about a 70 pound weight gap. I look at the heavyweight division is so different because, height wise, yeah, Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury were about the same. But when you consider that Deontay Wilder usually weighs about 220, 225, he used to sometimes weigh like 218. On the high side, Wilder might be closer to 230. when he's fighting the Gypsy King at 280, not enough is discussed and talked about in how there are really like 3 or 4 heavyweight divisions within the heavyweight division. And sure, once you get to 235, 240, if you could hit like a truck, then you could knock a 280 pound guy out, 290, 265. It doesn't matter. But in terms of your punch absorption, Alexander Usyk will not only have to get Tyson Fury's respect and keep it over the course of 12 rounds, but he's going to have to take punches from this 280 pounder. He's going to have to take punches up top to the body. So yeah, if Usyk can pull this off against Tyson Fury, I think that you can make an argument for either of those 3 guys. But as it stands today, would I give it to Inoue over Terrence Crawford? You know, if I do, then I think that it's recapturable if Crawford can earn a belt at 154. And I know it's against Madrimov, who it's one of these guys who kind of hits the scene and it's like, who? But, you know, he did look really good against Kurbanov, who has beaten a couple legit guys. But if Crawford can be a lightweight champion, a 140 pound undisputed, 147 pound undisputed, and then capture the belt at 154, staying undefeated. I know that, you know, Inoue is still undefeated, but if Crawford wins at 154, a 7 pound weight gap over, you know, 147, I would probably slightly swing it back in Crawford's direction. And look, Crawford also hasn't gone the distance at welterweight since Crawford stormed the gates and started calling out all the PBC fighters. There has not been a fighter, a welterweight, that has taken him the 12-round distance. You know what I mean? So it's not like he's just beating these guys and pulling off a lot of decision wins. No, he's knocking these guys out and stopping them every bit as much as the monster Inoue has. Now, Inoue's performance over, Stephen Fulton, that was shockingly one-sided. But Crawford's performance over a pound-for-pound guy, that's another thing. Stephen Fulton was knocking on the door of pound-for-pound top 10, but he wasn't in it. You know what I mean? He was probably top 15, right? Somewhere between 11 and 15, but he wasn't top 10. When Crawford stopped Errol Spence in that one-sided obliteration, that he knocked off a top 4 pound-for-pound guy right there. I had Spence at top 2, top 3 for some of those years. He knocked that guy off, dominated him and stopped him. So yeah, it's hard to place Inoue over Crawford. And if I did slightly give it to Inoue over Crawford, mostly because of inactivity coupled with the performances, Crawford, again, can earn that back with a 154 pound, a title win at 154. And then, depending on what happens when they go forward, like, do they fight Tim Tszyu, and the way that Virgil Ortiz or Tim Tszyu, the way that all of that is shaping up, it's going to be a very interesting 2024 and 2025 in the 154 pound division. But yeah, that's the best way I could answer it. I haven't done my unofficial top 10 since that Inoue fight. I haven't updated mine. I haven't decided on whether Inoue would get that bump. I heard that Ring Magazine just gave it to Inoue, just positioned Inoue at number 1. And I am mad at them for doing so. Again, I think you can make a sound argument for either. But again, the weight gaps and the amount of pounds per weight jump, and then Crawford's domination. He didn't fight Boots Ennis there, so there is that. He didn't fight the new school in the division. But Crawford's 36 years old. Like, or he's either 36 or I think he's 36 right now. Inoue's 31 years old. You know what I mean? So 35, 36, 30, when you start getting to that point, you can make an argument for not fighting the next up, right? If Crawford only wants like these legacy defining and legacy building wins, not to say that a win over Boots Ennis wouldn't contribute to that, but at 36, you've got a different argument for ducking, if you will, than somebody who's 31 like Inoue, or quite frankly, Canelo has fought 64 fights. So look, again, I wouldn't begrudge, I wouldn't begrudge Canelo for not fighting Benavidez, but if you're going to keep the belts, that's where it bothers me. Like, if Canelo could do whatever he wants, but if you're going to stay undisputed, and this was inevitably going to include Canelo, right? But if you're going to stay undisputed and stay in that pound for pound top 5, I feel like you do need to, take on the next up. So Crawford, I think he made like a calculated jump to 154 because he looked at Boots as being more risk than reward. I don't totally excuse it. At 36, I could get wanting to be a champion in a 4th division right now, but there was that unfinished business when he left the division at 147. There was, because Boots Ennis has been calling him out. He's been calling everybody out for at least 3 years and having like a solid claim like, hey, why don't you fight Boots? Why don't you fight Boots? Now, when nobody wants to fight the guy, it's hard to beat the guys that matter. Like, to David Benavidez has proven much more than Boots Ennis. He's beaten Demetrius Andrade, stopped him. He's beaten Anthony Durrell a few years ago. Anthony Durrell, a 2-time 168-pound champion. He beat Caleb Plant. So, David Benavidez has some of those big wins that matter a lot. Boots is looking for those wins. The best win that Boots has is either against Sergey Lipinets or against Roman Villa. You know what I mean? So it's not the same in terms of the opponent's claim and their deservingness of fighting, for undisputed against a Terrence Crawford or against a Canelo Alvarez. So that's how I see that. But right now, I would still give it to Crawford. He hasn't been taking the distance in a long time, and he does have a fight scheduled, but I wouldn't be mad either way. By the time I actually issue a short video on my new top 10, you just might see Inoue at number 1 over Crawford, at least until Crawford's next fight on August 3rd. Jay Foreman, you followed it up with, Usyk is already arguably the best cruiserweight of all time. To become undisputed at heavyweight is an insane feat, especially when you look at his resume. Yeah, Usyk is among the best. He's one of the 2 best cruiserweights of all time, right? It's pretty much a 2-man race between him and Evander Holyfield. Holyfield did become a heavyweight champion, multiple-time heavyweight champion. He beat Mike Tyson, a post-prime, but still exciting Mike Tyson. Clearly a post-prime Mike Tyson, though. That wasn't 80s Tyson. He was still a super popular fighter. But, Holyfield, soon after he became champion, he lost to Riddick Bowe. He lost 2 out of 3 to Big Daddy Bowe, right? And so he did struggle with the bigger elite heavyweights. He lost twice to Lennox Lewis, but they gave that first one a draw. I remember watching that with my dad and just shaking our heads because that was a robbery. He was game and he did fight hard, but Lennox Lewis won that fight. And Lennox Lewis... Sorry, that was an emergency alert. That was an Amber Alert. Sorry, y'all. Yeah, there was a missing endangered adult. Is it still an Amber? Yeah, I guess it is. Emergency alert. Sorry, y'all. Holyfield struggled with the bigger elite heavyweights when he went there. So he beat Buster Douglas. And soon after, he lost to Riddick Bowe. He got that back. He would later lose to Michael Moorer. So those losses matter. Alexander Usyk is still undefeated. Yes, if Alexander, especially if he beats Tyson Fury, because here's the thing. Holyfield fought like just about all of the elite heavyweights. He fought Hasim Rahman, and he fought these guys like when he was 40 plus in some cases. He fought John Ruiz like 3 times, won 1, lost 1, fought to a draw in the 3rd. I think that's how it went. I know it was a win, a loss, and a draw. He fought Hasim Rahman twice. I think the first one was where Rahman got that hematoma in the head, and I think they ran it back. He fought and got stopped by James Toney, PED era James Toney. Sorry, that's another one. Probably the same one. Hope it's the same one. So Holyfield lost those. So, he lost some of those important fights. Did he lose to Chris Bird too? I feel like he lost to Chris. I would have to check on that, but I think he might have lost to Chris. So he lost some of these fights, but he won some big ones, like the Tyson fight and the second fight against Riddick Bowe. He won some big ones, and he should have won that fight when he was damn near 50 against Nikolai Valuev. I remember watching that fight on a bad feed, and I was watching that one on a laptop. And I thought that Holyfield won the fight. I watched that one, standing up mostly. I was watching that one with my dad, and we both thought that Holyfield won, but that he got robbed. And I think they gave it to Valuev. And Holyfield might have fought once or twice after that, and then he retired. But Alexander Usyk still being undefeated. The one thing about Usyk's heavyweight reign, now look, he's beaten Anthony Joshua twice. He's beaten Daniel Dubois. He beat Chaz Witherspoon and Derek Chisora. And now he's fighting Tyson Fury. But for me, he didn't fight enough of the other top 10 guys. And there's a lot of that in the heavyweight division. And when you talk about the greatest in this era at heavyweight, we'll say the post-Klitschko era, where you've got Tyson Fury, Usyk, AJ, Wilder. Wilder, his best wins are against Luis Ortiz. His other best accomplishment is that draw against Tyson Fury. Now, if Wilder beats Zhilei Zhang, and then say he goes on to beat Jared Anderson, that cleans up a lot of those holes in the resume. Because, Wilder tried to fight Alexander Povetkin. Alexander Povetkin ended up testing positive for PEDs while Wilder was on his flight to Russia to fight Povetkin, or he was on his flight to Europe to then go to fight in Russia, something like that. But there are too many spots in the resume. Now, if Wilder had beaten Joseph Parker, that would have arguably, along with Luis Ortiz, that would have been one of Wilder's top 2 opponents that he beat, But he didn't fight Anthony Joshua. He didn't fight Andy Ruiz. He didn't fight a lot of those guys, Povetkin, through no fault of his, Dillian White, a lot of those guys that were making up the, Michael Hunter, the guys who were like 4 through 9. He didn't fight enough of those guys. Same thing with Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury did beat Dillian White, but he beat Klitschko. He beat Wilder twice. You could argue he should have won. He beat him twice, clearly, stopped him twice. But there are still those holes in the Gypsy King's resume. He didn't fight Andy Ruiz. He's now about to fight Alexander Usyk. That's huge. But there's a lot of that at heavyweight. Usyk did beat Daniel Dubois, didn't fight Dillian White, didn't fight Andy Ruiz, didn't fight Joseph Parker, didn't fight Deontay Wilder, did beat AJ twice, he is going to fight the Gypsy King, didn't fight Luis Ortiz. You know what I'm saying? So it's weird when you're trying to compare the heavyweights of today to the heavyweights of yesteryear, because the heavyweights were fighting more elite guys throughout their careers. The guy who has checked most of those boxes in terms of, have you fought those top 3 through 9 guys, is really Anthony Joshua. He beat Dillian White. He beat Joseph Parker. He beat Robert Helenius. He beat Andy Ruiz. So he's checked a lot. Alexander Povetkin, but he didn't beat any of the top 2, or at least, before Usyk came along. He did fight Usyk twice, lost twice, but he didn't fight the Gypsy King, or hasn't, and didn't fight Deontay Wilder. So either one of those guys, you can make weird arguments, like you could poke big holes in a lot of their resumes. Holyfield, say what you want about him, he pretty much fought them all, except for like David Tua. I don't think he fought Tua. Let me get to some of what you guys are saying. Oh, DJ's in the house. Thank you for coming through. Ben Golf's 1 is in the house. Thank you for coming through. And I still have to get back to your to the comment that you a comment that you had made on my last video. David Eister is in the house. Thank you for coming through. Miami Kid J, thank you. Let's see. But yeah, Usyk is arguably the best cruiserweight of all time. Yeah, the argument could definitely be made. Ben Goss 1. Errol Spence Jr. was a severely damaged fighter by the time he entered the ring versus Crawford. Bud gets little to no credit for that demolition, and he won't get credit for beating a 10-0-1 Madrimov. The Madrimov one is like a who? I get that. He did dominate and stop Kurbanov, even if you look at Kurbanov as like a who. With the Spence thing, I disagree with that, and I'll tell you why. And again, let me know if my audio drops at any moment. But with Errol Spence, his last performance before getting into the ring with Terrence Crawford was a stoppage win over Yordenis Ugas. Now you might say, well, Ugas had a big layoff after that fight, came back and lost to Mario Barrios, got dropped, I think multiple times, at least once. I think it was multiple times though. So who is Ugas? Well, Ugas had just beaten Manny Pacquiao, and you can make the argument 42-year-old, but Ugas fought, an even fight, could have gone either way, lost, but could have gone either way against Sean Porter. Ugas was a formidable fighter. And Errol Spence was coming off of that stoppage win before he fought Crawford. Now, look, ever since that accident, after Errol Spence fought Sean Porter, he gets in the accident. He comes back to the ring in pretty short time against Danny Garcia. Looks good, so a lot of people sweep the accident under the rug. Like, hey, he survived that. He's back to being Errol Spence. Nope, problem, right? But I always looked at it like, I just was never buying that you don't suffer something in your fight career when you get launched from your Ferrari at high speeds and land anywhere other than like a basket of Chuck E. Cheese balls, or a swimming pool, or a mattress. If you land on anything other than that, I don't think that you could just walk away from that unscathed, even if the belief at the time was that he walked away from it unscathed. So there is that. But his performances, the Danny Garcia one, the Ugas one, I think that Errol Spence, he might not have been super prime. And, to be frank, the way he was looking and even the way that he was talking, I know he's got the Texan drawl, but the way that he was talking going into, on the final press conference day, I measured their energy. You know what I mean? Just the way that they were conducting themselves. And Errol Spence seemed like he was talking differently than even Errol Spence used to talk. And also, I got the feeling, well, I'll just say this. I wondered if he thought he was going to win the fight based on how deferential he sounded like he was towards Terrence Crawford. Because Terrence Crawford had the energy in the press conference like, I'm about to whoop this dude's ass. Like, I don't care what y'all think. I'm about to whip this dude's ass. And it's only a matter of time. How long we got? 12 hours? I'm about to handle business. That is how Terrence Crawford came off. Errol Spence was more, like when he leaned into him and, and thanked him for the opportunity. And Terrence Crawford almost looked like he was taken back. Like, what you mean? Like, no, thank you too. Like, thank you for, it took both of us to make this happen, man. But there was just something different, because look, the years before the fight was made, at any time, any point, if you were to ask me who would win, Spence or Crawford, I was always team Spence. Not just from I'm pulling for Spence, but from if I had to put money on it, who would I bet on? But when I made the actual video predicting a winner, I swung the other way by then, and I picked Terrence Crawford by stoppage. I don't know if it was prime Spence or not, but time will tell. But I don't think that we have enough information to go on to totally discredit Terrence Crawford's performance in that one, especially when you look at the types of punches that he hit Errol Spence with. I feel like those punches were clever enough where they would have gotten through at any point. It's not like Errol Spence was just unable to let his hands go. No, Errol Spence more or less looked like he was fighting an Errol Spence style fight, but he was walking into like shots where Crawford would double up on a shot or would kind of sneak a lead hand in between Spence's punches, doing some of those types of tricks. So look, I'm not so sure that Crawford was dealing with damaged goods to that degree. And, we'll see how Spence looks in his next fight. I tend to think that if we weren't dealing with damaged goods going into Spence Crawford, that we really might be now going into Errol Spence's next fight. Like, look, we'll talk Ryan Garcia later, but if they did make Errol Spence versus Ryan Garcia, I think Ryan Garcia is dangerous in that fight. I mean, like PEDs aside, just with him being a special puncher, I don't know what Errol Spence's punch resistance would be like today. And with his style, coming in behind the jab, looking to change levels from the southpaw stance, going to the body, even with his style of pressure, he kind of, I could see Garcia matching him, at least matching him in hand speed and having a hard enough punch, even going up in weight to hurt Errol Spence. So yeah, I think that Ryan Garcia would be dangerous in that fight. Now, would I pick him to win? I don't know about that, but I think that he would be a live dog and has a hell of a puncher's chance in that one. Maybe even more than a puncher's chance when you couple it with the hand speed and his ability to let 2 or 3 punches go at a time. DJ said, people seem to be writing off Madrimov, but in my opinion, Madrimov is a live dog. I look at it as the same way. You know, Crawford's age, it's going to be 13 months since his Spence fight. I look at Madrimov as having a real shot. Now, Crawford does have a significant, like a 4-inch reach advantage, which usually comes in handy for Terrence Crawford. But yeah, these things happen fast when you see a fighter start to show some like performance degradation. Sometimes it happens on a slow decline. Sometimes it happens on just on a cliff, you know, but I wouldn't count Madrimov out here. David Iser said, the only guy I give a chance at beating Inoue is Junto Nakatani. Yo, Junto Nakatani's a bad boy. He's still at 115 though, isn't he? Or did he go up to 118? Where did he knock Maloney out? I want to say that was at 115 and in his last couple of fights after that. But Junto Nakatani he's looking like a really good fighter. Let's see. His last fight was at Junto Nakatani fought at bantamweight. So yeah. Okay. So he fought Alex Santiago and he fought Alex Santiago at bantamweight. Inoue's at 122. Nakatani does have the height maybe to carry up to 122. He's got the height right now. You know, Bam Rodriguez is the other guy who I think would have a decent shot. Now, Bam, I believe, is still at he was going between 112 and 115, right? So he would have to go to 118 and then 122. But if you look at how Bam's body is starting to fill out, he's still in his early 20s. I could actually see Bam at 118 sooner rather than later. Now, then you would be talking, you know, you're just one division away from Inoue. But even being one division away, you're talking about Inoue. So I don't know if Nakatani or Bam Rodriguez beats Inoue. At some point soon, there's not too much unfinished business after Sam Goodman maybe next at 122 for Inoue. But I think that Inoue would get to 126 probably before Bam Rodriguez gets to 122, unless Bam just decides to jump up maybe multiple divisions and say, F it, I'm just going to go for it and let the chips fall where they will. I think that we will hopefully see Inoue against, I don't know, the 2 guys I would want that just come to mind that I would want to see him in there with would be Luis Alberto Lopez and Brandon Figueroa. Those are the 2 matchups I would want to see how Inoue would deal with that for different reasons, you know? Miami Kid J, Canelo is asking for 200 mil to fight Benavidez, pricing himself out because he knows what time it is, and so does Crawford with Jaron Ennis. Yeah, that's a lot of money, 200 million. So Turkey Al-Sheikh would have to get involved in that one. And Crawford with Jaron Ennis, yeah, I don't think Crawford's interested in that fight right now. You know, I'm really curious to see. Well, Turkey Al-Sheikh was saying that he wants to try to make Canelo versus Terrence Crawford in December of this year. So, yeah, that's besides David Benavidez, Crawford is the guy I want to see Canelo fight the second after Benavidez. Terrence Crawford, I want to see it, even with the crazy weight gap. You know what I mean? 3 divisions, 2 if we're considering Crawford at 154, but he's not a 154 guy yet. So yeah, if they make that for December, I mean, you can't count Terrence Crawford out. And it's interesting to think that Crawford would have the height advantage, a slight height advantage over Canelo, and a reach advantage over Canelo. But Jermall Charlo had a height advantage over Canelo as well. And we saw how that went down. But I just cannot see Terrence Crawford fighting the style of fight that Jermall Charlo fought that day. David Eiser said, as good as Bruce Shoo Carrington is and Angelo Leo is, I think Inoue beats both of them. I would pick Inoue over Shoo Carrington right now and against Angelo Leo. Yeah. Ben Golfs One said, you should be forced into a donut eating contest with Andy Ruiz Jr. for even trying to compare Usyk with prime Evander Real Deal Holyfield. Wait, okay, are we talking resume or who would win between the two? Because look, the thing about Holyfield, one of his, I would say, superpowers is that for somehow he could take anybody's punch. Like even when he got stopped against Riddick Bowe in their third fight, it looked like he was having like an episode, like a heart episode in that fight. It was almost scary. Look, first of all, rewatch Bowe versus Holyfield's 1 and 2. Outstanding action in both of those fights. Incredible action, especially in the first one, but 2 as well. The third fight, I remember watching that one live, not at the venue, but on HBO or wherever that was being broadcast. And I remember feeling scared for Holyfield, thinking that he might be having a heart attack. And I remember there was like, he was known to have heart issues around that time. And then even when he got stopped against James Toney, it looked like it was more fatigue and something else going on rather than just getting hit by a Mack truck and getting floored in that way. It wasn't that kind of knockout. So when you see that Holyfield, when you see him going 24 rounds against Lennox Lewis, going the distance twice with the 6'5" Lewis, fighting Mike Tyson, taking his punches, fighting Big Daddy Bowe in those first 2 fights, taking all of those punches. Look at the punches that Holyfield got hit with in those first 2 Riddick Bowe fights. The guy's got one of the greatest chins in heavyweight history. So he ain't going nowhere, basically. Now, Alexander Usyk is such a craftsman and is a southpaw and is just like a technician of technicians. Holyfield would try to get inside, obviously. He would look for his opportunities to slip, get inside, and make it a rough and tumble fight. You know what? I'll tell you something. Okay. Now, Jay Foreman, you had said Usyk is arguably the greatest cruiserweight of all time. I think that I would actually pick Holyfield to beat Usyk. And the evidence that I would point to that makes me feel that way is Alexander Usyk versus Derek Chisora, believe it or not. Now, Holyfield and Chisora, they're very different, but I'm just talking pressure. Somebody who's going to be there. Somebody who you're not going to be able to you're not going to get away with fighting Holyfield without fighting Holyfield. Like you aren't going to skill and technique your way out of a fight with Holyfield. You know what I mean? And I get it. That was only Usyk's second fight at heavyweight when he fought Chisora. So he was still growing into the division. By at that point, the only other heavyweight he had fought was Chaz Witherspoon. But still, I just don't know how Usyk would deal. Because the thing is, Holyfield had footwork. No, it wasn't the style of footwork that a Usyk has, but it's an effective style of footwork that'll make sure that you get inside close enough to where you are letting your punches go. Like, maybe a Tyson Fury, because of his size and reach, would be able to keep Holyfield on the outside and keep a fight from breaking out. But short of that, I don't see somebody who's nearly, maybe a couple inches taller than Holyfield, but like within a couple of inches and about the same weight as Holyfield, being able to just like kind of matador and sharpshoot Holyfield at range without Holyfield getting his head in the trenches and letting his hands go. So I actually think that I would give Holyfield a slight edge for that reason. And again, not to mention his chin. He's not going anywhere. And he's pretty tough to win a decision against. Like Riddick Bowe, like would Usyk beat Riddick Bowe, prime Riddick Bowe? I can't definitively say yes. Now, Riddick Bowe went from this to this, like that. By the time those Holyfield wars were over and he found himself in the ring, he being Bowe, was in the ring against Andrew Galata, Bowe was getting worked in those fights. He was getting beaten badly. Low blows saved him and gave him 2 disqualification wins. I think it was both disqualification wins for Bowe in fights that he was losing pretty badly. But prime Riddick Bowe, I don't know if Usyk beats Bowe. Bowe was like 6'4", 6'5". He was nasty. He threw a lot of punches. He was a tough dude. And he also had a crazy chin. You know, and I think that this is true. I think Riddick Bowe, to this day, only has 1 professional boxing loss. I have to double check that, but I think he still only has that 1 loss against Holyfield in the second of their 3 fights. I think that was only Riddick Bowe's. Now, he didn't have a long career after those Holyfield wars. He had a very short career again, and he looked shot, but he was still winning after those Galata disasters that resulted in, again, DQ wins. So yeah, again, it's tough to compare today's heavyweights with yesteryear's heavyweights, but yeah, I can't. I would love to see it in something other than in a simulated like video game, but I think that I would lean Holyfield slightly. But look, if Usyk goes in there and beats Tyson Fury, I would give him a shot against any heavyweight. Straight up. Any heavyweight. If he could do that. He would still be, yeah, that'd be pretty crazy. Let me get to some more. Oh, because I also want to do just a quick discussion at some point on Lomachenko versus Kambosos. That's the fight that's taking place this weekend. But let me get to a couple more of your comments first. David Iser said, I think the only guy at 130 that would stand a chance against Inoue is Eduardo Nunez. That's the guy who gave Joe Cordina hell, and he gave Raymond Ford hell. One guy at 126, one guy at 130. Yeah, one guy at 126, one guy at 130. I think that's who you're referring to in Eduardo Nunez. Yeah, he's a pretty rugged dude. And I mean, he's a pretty good boxer. He's a rugged boxer. He's not just a brawler. Outside of Nunez and Nakatani, Inoue beats everybody with no question, and I would favor him over those 2 guys. So you're saying you would favor Inoue against anybody at 126, including? That's tough. That's tough. Like, okay. I mean, there's some good fighters at 126. First, I mean, it's those 2 guys that I had mentioned, Luis Alberto Lopez and Brandon Figueroa. Ray Vargas is still there, Nick Ball, Raymond Ford, Espinoza, who beat Robesi Ramirez. You got some really good fighters at 126. Not great fighters, but really good fighters. I was going to say even Josh Warrington, I would want to see him. But, I mean, he's been kind of chinny. And if you're chinny, Inoue ain't the guy to fight. Let's see. Jay Foreman said, how do you see Estrada versus Bam Rodriguez going? You know, Sup Swoles is in the house. Yeah, my bad. I forgot to send you the text right before I went on. Yeah, my bad. And you know, I was like doing like 2 or 3 things at once, and I'm like, text Joe, and I'm like, text him. And I didn't text you. My bad. Jay Foreman said, Estrada versus Bam. You know, I've got to go with the youth on this one. I haven't done the preview yet, and I am going to look at Estrada's last fight. But it's an inactivity thing as much as it is an age thing. Now, sometimes when you've had so many wars, a little bit of inactivity could do you some good. But he fought Chocolatito last in December of 2022. So by the time he'll be getting into the ring against Bam Rodriguez, he will have been out of the ring for a year and a half at least. So, let's see. Okay, so he's 34 years old. He just turned 34. Now in the lower divisions, you tend to age quicker, obviously, than at, cruiserweight, heavyweight. But 34, with the types of fights that he's had, he hasn't had like 60 something fights, but he's had like in the 40s. What is he, like 40 something? And he's 44-3. But it's the inactivity. I don't want to count him out. But Bam has been active. Bam just, beat up on Sonny Edwards like badly. I right now, my gut, again, I'll do more thinking and more analysis on this and watch more, more fights, recent fights from both guys before I do the preview. But my gut tells me to go with the guy who's in his early 20s and has been fighting some elite guys over the past like year to 2 years. You know what I mean? Not only because he beat Quadras and stopped Sor Rungvisai, but, that Estrada versus Chocolatito fight was really, really close, that third fight, as was the second. I mean, all their fights are pretty close. But I would side with Bam. Bam takes a lot of angles, but Juan Estrada, every time you start thinking that the guy's getting like the jump on him and the guy's starting to have his way against him, he starts doing things that puts him right back in it, or landing like meaningful combinations that put him right back in it. But I don't see Bam Rodriguez fighting a Chocolatito style fight where they just start like gunslinging and just fighting that trench fight. Like, I see Bam Rodriguez as being slightly more nuanced than that and doing different things that will eventually make Estrada look like he's just a step behind. And keep in mind, with Estrada versus Chocolatito, I thought it was, remember, Estrada went out and built a big lead against Chocolatito, and Chocolatito finished strong, very strong in the second half of the fight. If Estrada started to fade against Chocolatito in the second half of the fight, I think that really bodes well for Bam Rodriguez, who starts to pick it up in the second half of the fight. So yeah, I'm leaning Bam right now. Oh, my bad. David Iser said, nah, it's Nunez that beat Rakhimov. So who am I thinking about? Nunez. But the guy I was thinking about it's not Eduardo Nunez. Is it Eduardo Vasquez? It might be Eduardo Vasquez. Nunez, okay, yeah. Rakhimov recently just got stopped, right, in the late rounds. And Eduardo Nunez, like you said, is now Cordina's mandatory. So my bad. I think I got Eduardo Nunez mixed up with Eduardo Vasquez. It was Vasquez that gave Joe Cordina hell, and most people thought beat Raymond Ford a few fights ago for Raymond Ford. Let's see. David Iser said Komatov was injured at the end of the fight and he was inexperienced against Raymond Ford. That was a great fight. Really good fight. Subswole said Bam is a menace, man. Yeah, he is. He is. And if he's able to go up in weight and meet Inoue in a fight that doesn't seem like it's I don't want it to be a Lomachenko versus Rigondeaux type of weight escalation where Rigondeaux just jumped 2 divisions and was pretty old and fought Lomachenko and then got smoked, dominated, quit on the stool during the Nomaschenko era. But if Bam Rodriguez can, fight in the division that he would be fighting against Inoue and have good performances against elite guys in that division, and the fight kind of naturally makes itself, then I would love that fight. But I think that it's more likely that Inoue climbs one more division. Again, he's already in his early 30s, so the fight's going to have to happen probably in the next couple of years for it to really go down and be meaningful. Let's see. What I want to get into right now, well, first of all, Canelo beat Munguia, right? It was a good fight, I thought that it was a lot closer than the broadcast teams, than either broadcast team, the BBC team or the DAZN team. They both had broadcasts that were very super pro Canelo. It was like, when I heard the PBC broadcast, it sounded like they were auditioning to become the new home for Canelo fights. It almost sounded like they were auditioning to stay in Canelo's good graces. Like, Munguia was not getting enough credit for letting his punches go. Now, a lot of those punches were getting picked off, and Canelo was the sharper shooter, but that was no surprise. I just thought that Munguia, it's not like he stopped throwing combinations. He kept on coming forward, kept on letting his hands go. Yes, he was getting caught. Yes, he got dropped in that, fourth round or so. But there were a lot of swing rounds, I thought, in the second half of the fight. I don't think Munguia got enough credit, but I think that Canelo did look good. Like, I didn't walk away from this fight thinking, Canelo's super past his prime. I didn't. Munguia is just a tough game fighter who throws a lot of punches and is a young, strong dude. Now, it sounds like what's next for Canelo is likely going to be, and I hate to say it, Edgar Berlanga. And I say I hate to say it, not to be a Berlanga hater or anything. He just hasn't beaten any of the fighters that matter. He hasn't done anything that merits a fight with Canelo. You know what I mean? Like, it's a real stretch to say that Berlanga deserves it. Now, he is in the rare class of people who got famous before they got good. He had that first round knockout streak where his first 16 opponents, all first round knockouts, not just knockouts, but first round knockouts. So he got famous. He was on Snoop Dogg's radar, Fat Joe's radar, Lil Wayne's radar. He became a bit of a celebrity. And then he started learning to get good, like learning to round out his game. And then he had a few decision wins after that. But if you look at who he's beaten, his best wins are against like Marcelo Caceres, Quigley, Damon Nicholson. Like, how does that merit a Canelo fight? And what really pisses me off about that whole thing is that you have this super talented looking fighter, right? David Morrell Jr., undefeated fighter, Cuban fighter. I think he's from like Minnesota. But he was looking like one of the more promising young fighters in the division. He was the lesser regular title holder for the WBA. The WBA didn't once make him the mandatory opponent for Canelo. David Morrell Jr. is another PBC fighter. Canelo at the time was with DAZN. Now, well, he was with DAZN for most of that time. David Morrell was never named the mandatory. David Morrell announces that he's going to fight up at 175, so he's going to light heavy. The moment that happens, the WBA announces that Edgar Berlanga is the new WBA mandatory. So they never gave it to David Morrell Jr. They quickly gave it to Edgar Berlanga, who's like, he hasn't done that much more than David Morrell Jr., to be honest. Like, he's done a little bit more because Caceres is okay, but he hasn't beaten any top 10 guys in the division. Yet he's going to be named the WBA mandatory. So yeah, I think that it looks like the powers that be in the boxing ecosystem are conspiring to make Edgar Berlanga the next Canelo opponent for September. And they're going to like build it up as, Mexican versus Puerto Rican, and they're going to make a big deal of that. I think that, Berlanga needs to be fighting Jaime Munguia. Berlanga needs to be fighting David Morrell Jr. Berlanga needs to be fighting Christian Mabili. Berlanga needs to be fighting even Diego Pacheco, another somebody who's in their early 20s and would happily fight Edgar Berlanga. He needs to fight another top 10 guy in the division, but it looks like boxing is going to work in his favor, and the power brokers are going to see to it that Canelo fights Berlanga. But stay tuned. The other guy I would have said has a good shot at fighting Canelo next, aside from Crawford, who, again, it sounds like Turki Al-Sheikh wants to make that for December, which I'm skeptical that Canelo's going to be able to fight in September and then again in December. This isn't Canelo of 2021 where he fought, Callum Smith in December and then Avni Yildirim in like March, and then Billy Joe Saunders in like May or June, and then Caleb Plant a few months after. This isn't that Canelo. This is a couple years older, years that matter older. So I have a tough time envisioning Canelo fighting in May, September, and December. If it happens, great. I just don't envision it. But that's what Turki Al-Sheikh says he wants to do. So Yeah, it looks like it's going to be Berlanga. If it wasn't going to be Berlanga or Crawford, then I would have guessed that it might be Jermall Charlo. But that would be assuming Jermall Charlo gets back in the damn ring and fights somebody not named Jose Benavidez Jr. That's David Benavidez's older, smaller brother. Not as good, but decent. He got shot in the leg, and his career has been compromised, I think, since. Good chin. That's who Jermall Charlo's fought since his multiple year layoff, right? So I thought that they were gonna, maybe spin it back and try to make Canelo versus Jermall Charlo, but we just got word, and I said this at the top of the hour, that Jermall Charlo got arrested, DUI, twice the allowable, or not allowable, but twice the blood alcohol level that gets you a DUI. So he was super drunk, and he was evading police, allegedly, reportedly. But he just missed out on so much money. Like, I don't know if he'll ever get his career back on track, and it's pretty sad, and it sounds like he's really going through some stuff, but that's the other guy who I would have guessed might have been Canelo's September opponent. But stay tuned. I hope it's not Berlanga. I hope it's somebody better and more deserving than Berlanga. Even Christian Mabili, I'd rather that than Edgar Berlanga. Let's see. Yo, David Iser. So yeah, it was Vasquez. Yeah, not Nunez, Vasquez. Okay. Yeah, thanks for confirming. Let's see. That's funny. You said that his win over Rakhimov isn't yet listed on BoxRec. That's interesting because BoxRec usually has the win in cases where Wikipedia doesn't. Sometimes Wikipedia will drop the ball until months later, but BoxRec usually has it. Yeah, you have to look up YouTube and look on YouTube for that Rakhimov versus Nunez fight. Jay Foreman said Canelo's motto right now: anyone but Benavidez. The money has to be right to fight Benavidez. Yeah, give me $250 million to fight David Benavidez because he brings in an extra 20 pounds, like Dmitry Bivol, or like, you know what I mean? Like he fought Kovalev, who's a bona fide light heavyweight. He's fought big guys before. And, and I forgot who brought this up, but if it's such a big deal, it's not like people don't like exercise, or include rehydration clauses, same day weigh-in or afternoon weigh-ins, and different things to try to mitigate what might be your opponent blowing up in weight between the weigh-in and the time of the fight. Pull some of those levers. You know what I mean? It's not you're Canelo. It's not like you can't do it as the A side and as the biggest superstar in boxing. He just doesn't seem like he wants to fight David Benavidez, or he really thinks that he could get $200 million for the fight. Again, see Turkey a la Sheik, right? I mean, we'll see. But yeah, it's just been frustrating watching that avoidance and listening to the excuses. Let's see. GWK said, hey, first of all, thank you for coming through. Did you catch Lipinets versus Davies Pro Box last night? Yeah, I actually mentioned that at the top of the hour. That was a top 3 to top 5 fight of the year so far. That's the thing about Pro Box. So, there's the different promoters on different platforms: Top Rank, ESPN, Matchroom and Golden Boy, DAZN, PBC, currently Amazon Prime. And then you've got, other guys like you got Lou DiBella, who, usually works things out on with ESPN. You've got Queensberry, Frank Warren, who usually works things out on DAZN. So yeah, usually on DAZN. And then you've got Boxer with 2 X's. That is Ben Shalom's outfit. They're with Peacock. So there's another promoter in the game, right? One of the top 6 promoters, I'd say, who's got a deal with Peacock. They got a couple good fights coming up, including, I think, one like in a week or two. Isn't that, which one is, no, I forgot. There's a fight coming up on Peacock that's pretty good though. But Pro Box, every Wednesday, they've got a pretty good fight. And it's usually guys who are either coming off of losses against some of the best fighters or like former champions, sometimes up and comers, sometimes journeymen, and who are meeting another journeyman in similar phases of their career. But yeah, we got a good one with Sergey Lipinets, who, his first loss was against Mikey Garcia. He had recently gotten stopped by Boots Ennis, recently got beat by, what's baby Muhammad Ali's name? Michelle Rivera. He got beat by him. But yeah, Sergey Lipinets and Robbie Davies Jr. had a really good fight. And you could look that up on YouTube. Excellent back and forth fight. Like, I'm not going to spoil too well. I don't care. I don't know if anybody minds spoilers on that one. But yeah, Lipinets versus Davies is worth a watch. A lot of back and forth. They both get hurt at different times of the fight. But yeah, ProBox, I like their product. Again, it's on YouTube. You stream the fight live on YouTube, not like YouTube, the paid version, but regular YouTube. They've got the fights. Like, I saw a former featherweight champion who at one point knocked out Nonito Donaire and was and whose only career loss is against Prime Lomachenko. Nicholas the Axe Murderer. Now he's changed it to, I think, the Axe Man. Might have sanitized the nickname. But I recently saw him come back. He had an 8-year layoff. I thought he would never come back. He ended up fighting on ProBox, beating a pretty good fighter in Joseph Adorno. I'm like, wow. But yeah, ProBox, if you're into midweek boxing, Wednesdays, ProBox usually has it going on. And again, their commentary includes Paulie Malignaggi and Chris Algieri. Let's see. Yeah, QT is in the house. Thank you for coming through. Lipinets versus Davies was entertaining for sure. Yeah. If they step up after that fight and fight like an elite guy, either one of those guys, like Lipinets, his chin, you could tell is kind of going. Davies' face got totally, bruised and shattered. I would think that now Lipinets showed to me that he was more chinny than Davies, but Davies took more punishment, I would say. But a lot of the Davies punishment was also to the body. Lipinets, it seemed like every time he got clipped cleanly upside the head with a hook, he started, getting shaky. Yeah. Bobby Ongsueko. Yeah, you're right. That was the result. Good fight though, really good fight. And there were knockdowns in that fight, multiple knockdowns. Davies got knocked down multiple times. And what made it interesting was that Lipinets started off good, pretty well, and then he got hurt pretty badly a few rounds in, and then he got hurt pretty badly later on in the fight. So that heightened the excitement. Yeah, Lipinets is a gatekeeper now. Let's see. So who do you guys have between Lomachenko and Kambosos? Is anybody giving Kambosos a shot here? If you haven't seen it, I actually just dropped the full preview early this morning. Lomachenko's 36, and Kambosos has a pretty fan-friendly style. And, it's going to be in Australia, Perth, Australia. It's going to be a raucous crowd. Kambosos, unless you have him kind of hypnotized and like just frustrated and unsure of himself, like Haney had him, and to a lesser degree, Maxie Hughes kind of had him in, not in trouble, but was outboxing him. Usually, when Kambosos is fighting a guy who's willing to like just engage at all times, Kambosos usually looks a lot better. It's when somebody's outboxing him, like even Mickey Bay kind of outboxed him in spots. But Lomachenko at 36, I think, is going to be coming forward. He's going to have to let his hands go. I don't know if he's going to have a noticeable hand speed advantage. I believe he's got the IQ advantage, and that's really kind of what I'm leaning on here. He's still a really good athlete, and he finishes the fight strong, but he doesn't start the fight strong, and that's a problem. He started poorly against Teofimo Lopez. He started poorly against, not poorly, but not well, against Devin Haney, and he started poorly against Jermaine Franklin. Or not Jermaine Franklin, but Jermaine Ortiz. Jermaine Franklin. That's the guy who fought to the decisions with Dillian White and Anthony Joshua, who also has a fight coming up pretty soon. Not Joshua, but Jermaine Franklin. But yeah, against all three of those guys, all recent fights, Lomachenko has had a slow start. I don't think he could afford to really do that against Kambosos, given how lively the crowd's going to be. Now, that's unless he has a slow start and then by the third or fourth round has it totally figured out, like he had against Nakatani, not Junto Nakatani, but Masayoshi Nakatani, the guy who gave Teofimo Lopez a super close fight and stopped Felix Verdejo after that. That Nakatani. Lomachenko, and this was the fight after he fought, after Loma fought Teofimo Lopez, he fought Nakatani, and then he fought Richard Comey. Against Nakatani, the first 2 rounds were interesting, and there was like a headbutt, and I think Loma got cut, or got cut in the head or something. But the first 2 rounds were interesting, but by round 4 or 5, he had Nakatani figured out. And by that point, it was all downhill for Nakatani. He got bludgeoned, stopped, dropped multiple times. It looked like a scary beatdown at the hands of Lomachenko. Maybe Lomachenko could kind of crack Kambosos' code like that and then just put a, beating on him to the horror and of the Aussie crowd. Maybe that happens. But I think that Kambosos is actually going to be pretty competitive here. Pretty competitive. But again, you would have to lean on Lomachenko's experience, IQ, and just, his abilities as well. His angle taking. I think that it's going to be something where, he throws that backhand, left hand, southpaw. He likes to, and who else does this? Manny Pacquiao used to do it. Throw the left and then throw the jab hand, right hand on top of it, where you hit him with the backhand, or you might even miss. But if you miss with that left, then they think that the combination's over because you just let go with your backhand. But then you throw, as you're taking another step forward, you put the right hand on top of it. I could see, he hit Jermaine Ortiz with that a few times, but I could see Lomachenko using that to good effectiveness against Kambosos. I could see that really working for him. I could also see him wanting to get on the inside and start not mixing it up, but letting short left hands go, and maybe also going to Kambosos' body. But one thing with Loma is sometimes he is a bit of a headhunter. It'll also be interesting to see if Kambosos goes to Lomachenko's body, because Jermaine Ortiz did to good effectiveness, I thought. But yeah, I think that this one is going to surprise us. I think that Kambosos is going to be catching Lomachenko just too early to where Kambosos gets the win, but late enough and old enough to where it could be nearly even, talking like split decision, majority decision, something like that. Or maybe like 115 to 113, which then gets changed to 115 to 112. Because, I think that there's a decent chance that Lomachenko knocks Kambosos down, not out, but down, and wins like a 115 to 112 or 116 to 111 type of scorecard. I could see something like that. But I don't think Lomachenko is going to stop Kambosos. If he does, that'll be very impressive, because Kambosos never got stopped by Haney. Obviously didn't get stopped by Teofimo Lopez. That would be impressive. And usually when a guy in the lower weight classes starts turning 35, 36, even 33, 34, their knockout percentage starts to go down. So a lot of that is because they're fighting nothing but elite or near elite fighters by that point. So naturally, you're going to be fighting to more decisions. Great fighters are tougher to stop, period. But yeah, if Lomachenko is able to stop Kambosos, hats off to him. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think it's going to be a pretty close fight. Let me get to some of what you're saying while I sip this ginger tea. And it's like super hot too. I keep it like in this Yeti mug, and it keeps it basically damn near the temperature that it was at when it was boiling. Close. Let's see. QT says, I think Loma destroys him. He has to, or it's over. See, I don't think he has to destroy him. Like, okay, are you saying that he has to destroy him because Haney dominated him and like Loma to show that he's still elite? Like, are you saying it because you think that like Shakur Stevenson would dominate George Kambosos, therefore for Lomachenko to have a decent chance or a good chance at beating Shakur Stevenson, it would be in his best interest, and it would be more likely that he's competitive against Shakur Stevenson if he dominates or at least beats, Kambosos by like a few rounds, like 9 rounds to 3 or something like that. Because what I'm saying is, I think that Lomachenko could still beat him in a relatively close fight and still be competitive against some of the elite fighters. Let me ask you this. Today, does he beat William Zepeda? Does Lomachenko beat William Zepeda today? And does George Kambosos go the full 12 against William Zepeda? I kind of think yes to the latter. I kind of do. But I don't know. Like, William Zepeda's been looking really good. But, I mean, he's been taking the distance recently by Jojo Diaz, who just got stopped in his last fight against Oscar Duarte. But it's not like, fighters aren't taking William Zepeda the distance. But, I mean, in recent fights, like that fight against Mercito Hesta, and then before that against Jojo Diaz, and then even though, again, the Diaz fight went the distance for William Zepeda. And then most recently against Maxie Hughes, William Zepeda looked like an absolute nightmare. But yeah, does Loma beat William Zepeda? David Eicher said, I think Loma versus Zepeda is a good fight. Zepeda barely scraped by Rene Alvarado. Yeah, that was a very close fight. That was a really close fight. Let's see. So David Eicher said, Lomachenko has no killer instinct. I thought that he showed killer instinct, obviously, against Nakatani in 2021, and then against Richard Comey. Even though he didn't get the stoppage, he nearly stopped Richard Comey. That was one of those fights where he's appealing to Richard Comey's corner, like, hey, y'all gonna do something about this? He beat the hell out of Richard Comey in that fight. But maybe ever since he came back from the Ukraine, once Russia invaded Ukraine, maybe since that layoff, it wasn't that long of a layoff, but since that time out of the ring, he hasn't been like the same fighter. But, he's also fought guys like Jermaine Ortiz, Devin Haney. I mean, like those are very durable fighters. By the way, y'all saw that fight where it was Jermaine Ortiz against Antonio Moran, the same guy who Devin Haney had that highlight reel knockout against, and Antonio Moran badly hurt Jermaine Ortiz. This is before Jermaine Ortiz would then fight a frustratingly even fight with Teofimo Lopez. But yeah, I think that was that might have been Jermaine Ortiz's. Yeah, that was his last fight at 135, and then he went up to 140 to fight Teofimo. But let's see. DJ said, I think Kambosos could win by throwing punches and bunches, but I think that's his only chance of securing a victory. Yeah, punches and bunches. He just has to make this a kind of a muddy-ish fight. Just a lot of exchanges. You got to give as good as you take. You know what I mean? One of those types of mix it up types of fights. It can't be a slow paced fight. He didn't look good when the fight during the moments where the fight against Maxie Hughes was slow paced. He was just eating straight left hands. And, the way that he was eating those straight left hands and even some right hooks makes me think that, maybe Lomachenko does pull away on this one. Pull away on the scorecard. GWK said, I think Loma is on paper is better in every way there could be, but some individual factors going for Kambosos, like the home crowd, judging, and how slow Loma starts in most fights. Yeah, the slow start. And, remember that the first Devin Haney versus Kambosos, or I should say Kambosos versus Devin Haney, the first one. Remember those scorecards read like 8 rounds to 4, 7 rounds? They were like way closer than the fight looked. That, has me thinking, what if Kambosos gets like a shady split decision win over Lomachenko? Or just like, I'm not going to say like a shady one, but like a disputed one. Boxing fan is in the house. Thank you for coming through. I got Lomachenko stopping George at the 10th, being very strategic and precise, as Loma normally is, right? But yeah, you've got him stopping George Kambosos. That would be impressive. QT said Loma has to come in humble, start fast, and not lay off the 12th round like he did against Devin, which, yeah, I was watching that fight like, why is Loma doing that? Like, he's right in this fight, and he's going to kind of let Devin take control of the 12th. Yeah, you don't want to see him crying again. You know, I get the crying. I could understand the frustration. I mean, just with everything the fighters put into, you know, the camps, leaving their families, leaving their country, all that stuff, and just everything that goes into the fight. But yeah, Loma would serve himself well to not start slow and not take the 12th round off. Let's see. Boxing Fan says, Loma takes Zepeda no problem. So is it because you see Zepeda as just being like a high volume, not a thinking fighter? Look, here's one thing about Zepeda though. Well, first, let me ask you, is it because you think that Loma is just that much higher IQ than Zepeda to where he should just eat his lunch? Because here's the thing. Zepeda does throw a ton of punches. Oh, you say exactly. Okay. So Zepeda throws a ton of punches, but if you look at when the exchange ends and then the fighter tries to circle out to like buy time, Zepeda will stick that long jab out and use that jab to occupy the time, occupy the space. So he's occupying space and time, putting the jab in the opponent's face, even in the moments where he's not throwing 6-punch combinations or like 4 sets of 4-punch combinations. So even in the slower moments, he is keeping his opponent busy, even as the opponent moves away. He still will just take the big step, big jab. All of a sudden, you're right back in punching range. Let more punches go. So he almost gives the opponent no room to breathe. You know what I mean? He kind of drowns them in that way. I would be curious to see how that works against a 36-year-old Lomachenko. But, you know, Lomachenko usually doesn't look like he's just dog tired. You know, I mean, he obviously, like, who doesn't get tired in hard-fought 12-rounders? But he's got great cardio. But again, 36, being able to handle that type of intense pressure and volume, I don't know. And power. It's not like he's, you know, pillow-fisted and just throwing a bunch of punches that, you know, kind of lose steam. Those punches carry a lot of pop. But again, a lot of people do, or not a lot, but there are lesser fighters, lesser than Lomachenko, that go the distance against William Zepeda. But it's hard to win a lot of rounds against Zepeda because of how many punches he throws. Let's see. David Eicher said, I threw $20 on a parlay for Lomachenko to stop Kambosos and for Maris Briedis to knock out Jai Opetaia. Payoff will be $800. $20 to win $800? That's not bad. That's actually not bad. You know, I was stunned to see how big of a favorite, at least last I checked, Opetaia was against Briedis, being that their first fight was like razor close. Briedis finished strong, broke Opetaia's jaw, and Briedis, you know, has only lost to Alexander Usyk and Jay Opetaia. Briedis is going to come in with a ton of pride. This fight means everything to him. Yes, he is like in his mid to late. Is he 30? Is he closer to 37 or 35 right now? Maris Briedis. He's getting up there though. But man, but to knock out Opetaia. Now, Briedis has a hell of a punch, but boy, that would be shocking if he knocks out Opetaia. But for Briedis to beat Opetaia, you got to think that he's got a decent chance because he had a great chance the first time they fought when Opetaia took the title from Briedis. Oh, Briedis is 39. Damn. Okay. Yeah. I thought he was like closer to 37 or something. 39. Well, they say the last to go is power, but Jay Opetaia is looking really good. Is there a chance that Jay Opetaia underestimates Maris Briedis in the rematch? Because of, you know, I always like to say there are fighters in the sport that become the shiny new object that people just say, oh, it's this guy. And then they like Boots Ennis, you know, a couple years ago, Shakur Stevenson a year or two before that. They're, they're fighters that kind of hit the scene And then they are just looked at as being like, oh, they're like the untouchable, perfect, well balanced, this and that. Oh, pound for pound potential type of fighter. Jai Opetaia is one of those shiny new objects in the sport of boxing because of how he kind of stormed the gates at cruiserweight. But damn, 39 years old. I didn't know all that. But yeah, we're about to wrap this one up, y'all. Again, Jermall Charlo arrested, stripped of the WBC title. Carlos Adames elevated to full champ. He's going to be fighting, he being Adames, is going to be fighting Terrell Goucher on that Tank Davis versus Frank Martin undercard. Beterbiev versus Bivol postponed. Bivol will still fight on June 1st against Malik Zinad. It's going to be a stay busy title defense for Bivol, but he'd rather fight than not fight. Beterbiev's injury is reportedly a knee, so that sucks. Beterbiev seems, again, I said this at the top of the hour, seems to always get injured before his fight. It never fails almost. You could almost predict that the fight will not go off without a hitch. There will be a postponement, some injury to Beterbiev, and then he'll get into the ring and clean his opponent up, via stoppage. But this does, at Beterbiev being like 38 now or something like that, this does change how I view Beterbiev versus Bivol. A knee injury before going in to fight Bivol. And the WBO also ordered an interim WBO light heavyweight title fight between Joshua Buatsi and Anthony Yarde. Shakur Stevenson versus Artem Haratunian is now official on that undercard. O'Shaquie Foster is going to be defending his WBC 130-pound title against Robson Conceição. I am glad that Conceição gets another shot after fighting to that draw against Emmanuel Navarrete, and for fighting, a very close fight against a PED positive Oscar Valdez a couple fights before that. Keyshawn Davis is going to be on that card too against Miguel Madueño. Lomachenko versus Kambosos coming up this weekend. Bob Arum says that if Lomachenko beats Kambosos, that he wants Shakur Stevenson, assuming Stevenson beats Haratunian, versus Lomachenko later this year for a title unification fight, because Lomachenko versus Kambosos is for the IBF, the vacant IBF 135-pound title, one of the belts that Devin Haney vacated. Jessica McCaskill versus Lauren Price is also this weekend at 147 on DAZN. Eduardo Rocky Hernandez, the guy who fought, who gave that great fight against O'Shaquie Foster. Rocky Hernandez returns to the ring against Daniel Lugo, who fought a super close fight against Mauricio Lara. So Rocky Hernandez versus Daniel Lugo this weekend as well on DAZN. Another fight this weekend is Denzel Bentley versus Danny Dignam. Danny Dignam's lost to Janibek, so has Denzel Bentley. Denzel Bentley lost to Janibek via decision. Danny Dignam lost via second round stoppage. Denzel Bentley has also lost to Felix Cash. He got stopped by Felix Cash, and he recently lost in his latest fight, a split decision against some guy that is starting to get some buzz, courtesy of Top Rank. Marlon Tapales also fights, but Tapales fights tomorrow against Natapong Jankao. I think that fight is in the Philippines. I don't know it to be televised by any broadcasting network, but yeah, Marlon Tapales is the guy that Inoue fought to become undisputed at bantamweight. And Marlon Tapales, before losing to Inoue, upset MJ Akhmadaliev. Crawford versus Canelo, or Canelo versus Crawford, being eyed for December. It still leaves the question, well, what does Canelo do in September? Did I say September for Canelo Crawford eye for December? Canelo still doesn't have an opponent for September, but I expect it to take a couple months before anything is announced there. Let's see. Benji and Brexley are in the house. What's going on? Love you guys. Yeah, Benji's my cousin. Yeah, we talk boxing all the time. Yeah. Yes, Shakur Stevenson. That good point. He said it must be Stevenson's last fight on the Top Rank contract, so that's why Bob Arum is promising. But the thing is, if Arum's gonna promise Lomachenko at the end of the year, it's gonna come with strings attached. It's gonna have to be like a long-term contract. Like, who just got out of the contract because they didn't want to take the extra fights in the deal, even though that fight was a fight that they wanted. There was a fighter who was getting a meaningful fight that they wanted, but they left the promoter because they didn't want to sign on for more fights after that. But yeah, it does sound like that's what's going on here. Let's see. FG is in the house. No, who's Broner's going to be fighting some other way post-prime opponent. Broner doesn't have any business in the ring with Devin Haney. But I don't want Devin Haney to fight Ryan Garcia in any immediate rematch. And I think that Devin Haney is wise not to want it. Which, you know, last topic I want to close on, by the way, is Lee Van is in the house. Thank you for coming through. He said better be if could be done already. Doesn't seem to care too much for boxing until he gets in the ring, right? And I mean, his workouts are crazy where he's got the barbell and then he like flips it and catches it like that. That looks like it's hell on the wrist and forearm, but crazy workout. Yeah, Oscar Valdez, David Eister said you regain respect for Oscar Valdez. It's probably especially after that fight against Liam Wilson, right? That was a great fight. Really good fight. Boxing fan said, not to discredit George, but 2020 was a strange time for boxers. Yeah, and Teofimo had that health issue, right? That wasn't reported until after the loss. But yeah, there were a lot of weird things, and plus that fight was postponed like 4 different times. First, they were changing like fight dates, then they were changing promoters and platforms. It was chaotic going into Teofimo Lopez versus George Kambosos. Plus, Teofimo Lopez fought one of the worst strategic fights I've seen in recent memory. But yeah, so Ryan Garcia, you know, they've been making a lot of noise on Twitter or X and talking about like the amount of PEDs, the amount of Ostarine, and they're talking about the units of measurement and the percentages, the small fractions of a percent, right? But if you listen to, you know, certain experts, Victor Conte included, you know, former Balco guy who was helping the cheating baseball players, you know, Barry Bonds, Mark McGwire, you know, and so forth. He was the biggest name in baseball for a couple of years when all the baseball players were going down. But he's reemerged and he's a nutritionist. He's trying to clean up the sport. That's like his new mission. Because you go from disgraced nutritionist to trying to get back in good graces. So that's his like new mission. So, but I get why anybody would give a side eye to Victor Conte. Like, why should we believe you? But he is an expert on the matter. But I also get that, you know, people say, well, you know, don't you advocate for Devin Haney? It hasn't Devin Haney worked with you as a nutritionist? And aren't you the snack guy, SNAC? You see a lot of fighters promoting snack, Devin Haney among them. And he was an advisor, I believe, to VADA. He doesn't work for VADA. Well, I guess if you're advising or consulting or working in any capacity, but he's not in VADA. He's not a part of VADA. But a lot of people are trying to discredit VADA and discredit Victor Conte because Conte works with VADA, and they're saying, oh, it just makes sense that Devin Haney's guy, Victor Conte, is, you know, the guy who, you know, Ryan Garcia is testing positive with VADA. And then they're bringing up the percentages, right? The low dose that he's getting popped for. But yeah, he did. When Mosley got caught during the rematch against De La Hoya, right? So the reason, and a lot of people will say that sometimes you could test for such small fractions of amounts right before the fight and have tested positive or tested negative the several times prior to that while you were like in training camp, even prior to training camp. So you test negative, negative, and then positive right before the fight. The theory is, and the explanation is, that it's called pulsing. That's the term that they use. And that as you start dehydrating yourself, shedding those last several pounds, you're losing weight, you're losing sodium, you're losing water, you're losing a bunch of stuff. And then that small fraction can then emerge and go from non-detectable to detectable in the drug test, because your body's composition, your body's chemistry is changing due to you losing that last few rounds trying to make weight, or at least half trying to make weight if you're Ryan Garcia. But that would explain why it would be such a low amount. But I'll leave it at this. Let's wait for May 22nd. That's when the findings from the B sample will be tested. The information is going to be made available, and then they are going to make an assessment. And then there will be from the athletic state commissions who hands down the penalty if there is going to be a suspension. And, you know, when it comes to the duration of a suspension, and I think I might have said this in the last chat, look, 6 months is nothing to a fighter. These guys fight once, maybe twice a year anyway. 6 months is nothing, suspensions wise. That works perfectly with the average fight cycle. 1 year is not adequate. It's really not adequate. You basically miss one pay cycle. And with the amount of money that Ryan Garcia would have made in cheating, if he did in fact cheat, which time will tell, we know that he tested positive, but if he did cheat, then it would have been well worth it because of the money that you made. Hell, you could take a year and a half off and not sweat it because you know when you return to the ring, you're going to make that money right back. I really feel that in cases like this, it should be a 2-year suspension minimum. 1 year to me isn't enough. Like, I might see a middle ground in 18 months. 18 months, if it's not 2 years, 18 months minimum. 12 months, that if you're a fighter and you get back in the ring like in 16 months or something, that's not unusual for elite fighters sometimes. So look, we'll see what the test says, but if he does test positive in this B sample and there was ostarine, at least 18 months, not 6 months, not 12 months. And this doesn't come from any disliking of Ryan Garcia. I don't even dislike Ryan Garcia. I disliked his style of trolling if he was faking it, but I personally don't think he was faking it. I think that he really expressed a lot of his beliefs, and whether or not he was really taken out into the woods and held down and forced to watch what he said he was forced to watch, whether or not that was true, I believe that he believed it was true. Look, it just sounds like certain specific mental health issues, but I don't think it was a 100% troll. I think some of it he might have been playing up with certain things, but with other things, I don't think he was just faking that. But when it comes to cheating and then putting hands on somebody, I think that they should find a way to press criminal charges in some of these cases. I know that that's not the way boxing works right now, and I went a lot deeper into this in the last live chat, but I'll just leave it at, we'll see what the test says when May 22nd rolls around, and we'll see what kind of suspension, if any, that they levy in light of what the B sample reads. But yeah, I want to thank you guys once again for coming through. Sakamoto Reload is not a Naoya Inoue fan. Nonito Donaire is not C-level. Marlon Tapales is not C-level. Stephen Fulton isn't C-level. You know what I mean? Naoya Inoue's fought a lot of good fighters. So I don't know if you're joking or being serious, but Naoya Inoue's fought a lot of he's fought a few really good fighters. I'm not going to say he's fought a lot of really good fighters. He's fought a couple really good fighters, and then a couple more good fighters, or a few good fighters. Emmanuel Rodriguez, Jason Maloney, credible, good fighter. And that's not the Maloney that got knocked out cold by Nakatani. That's Andrew Maloney. Jason Maloney is the one who fought those fights, I believe, with Franco, fought 3 fights with Bam Rodriguez's brother. But Jason Maloney, Emmanuel Rodriguez, Nonito Donaire, Stephen Fulton, lesser Paul Butler, Marlon Tapales, and he fought Donaire twice, too. Luis Neri. Luis Neri's a really good fighter. But yeah, thank you guys. FG, Sakamoto Reload, Lee Van, Jay Foreman. And one more time, just give me your picks. Just say Loma or Kambosos. I just want to see if anybody's actually going with Kambosos with the upset. But yeah, if you pick Loma, let me know if it's Loma via stoppage or decision. But yeah, I want to thank you guys once again. Golden Ram Buzz, aka I think that's my homie Damon. Nova 1992. I gotta look up to see if Abraham Nova was born in 1992. Ben Goss 1, DJ, David Eister, Miami Kid J, Sub Swoles, GWK, QT, Bobby Onsueco, David Eister. Yeah, boxing fan. Loma by KO. Decision. Loma. But yeah, enjoy the fights. Remember, like that is the big fight that's taking place, but there are a lot of other fights going on this weekend as well. You know, where I look to see the latest on, fight making. Well, sometimes I look at like the boxing scene calendar. But Dan Rayfield, I subscribe to his Substack called what is it? Fight Freaks Unite. And then on every Tuesday, he gives you like the most detailed, because you'll get a lot of different boxing event and boxing fight lists, but they usually have like the most important fights or the biggest fights, and sometimes not like super updated. But every Tuesday, Dan Rayfield issues out the fight schedule, and it's very, very, very detailed. That's where I've been going lately. Through the years, my source has usually changed over the years. Sometimes it was boxing scene, sometimes it would be like another website, but lately it's been that Dan Rayfield Substack. Benji says Loma 2. Boxing fan, Loma stoppage in the 10th. Lee Van says Loma by KO. Benji, you got Loma via knockout or decision? Yeah, let me know. But yeah, thank you guys once again. Enjoy the fights this weekend. We're gonna pick this back up next week. Yeah, I'm sure there's gonna be a lot more breaking news. I hope Jermall Charlo seriously gets like the help that he needs, and I hope that at some point he could get his career back on track. But to be honest, that seems like it's a distant second when it comes to concerns revolving around Jermall Charlo. But I am happy that the WBC stripped him of the title, and that Carlos Adames is finally elevated to full champion. Long deserved. But yeah. Oh, Benji said by KO. Okay. That'll be his first stoppage since Nakatani. But yeah, thank you guys once again. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in. Peace.